Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Amandla. Amandla. Okay, the idea is that by 4 o'clock, we must be out here. So, how you clap and everything else, remember that by 4 o'clock we should be out of here. There are also board members of the Kathrada Foundation, the Nelson Mandela Foundation itself, Comrade Sean Bolton, who is executive of Kathrada Foundation, and Silo Hateng, and the staff of the foundation, who are all here. Let me just say that this is a memorial service that is hosted by the Kathrada Foundation. It's also hosted by the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as the South African Communist Party in Gauteng. And would like to thank the South African Communist Party for the great initiative that they came up with. Ladies and gentlemen and comrades, this is particularly important because Comrade Kathy started his political life in the Communist Party. He was a member of the Young Communist League, graduated to the Communist Party, into the ANC, Umkhonto weSizwe, and other structures of the democratic movement. So it's important that we acknowledge that. This event, again, is supported by the ANC in Gauteng, many other civil society organizations. Thank you very much. Many civil society organizations and leaders across the length and breadth of Gauteng and beyond. So, when we start then, we will start with the tributes. Can I just say before we start with the tributes, young men and women who are sitting nicely, can they give space to senior citizens of this country? Can we do that? And that will be in keeping with the broad traditions of our society, as well as the democratic movement. Now, let's start with the Kathrada Foundation. Yeah, I know when the young people are moving around, okay. If there's a seat next to you, can you raise your hand? And old people can fill in those seats. And then somebody in Gomalapo. Thanks, Mekut. Okay. We start. Amanda. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Shivane. Okay. The first to start is the Kathrada Foundation. Kathrada family. The tribute is going to be made by Tasmin and Aliyah Kathrada. Are they here?
It's just me speaking today. I graduated on Thursday, and Kathy Papa would have been so proud. And I know this because education was his cornerstone, education in the youth. When I finished my degree, I emailed Auntie Barbara and Kathy Papa to tell them how excited that I was, that I had studied politics and I was following in his footsteps, and they replied so beautifully and so excited for me and for my achievement and just generally for education. And then Kathy Papa called and he was elated, and it was a moment that will stick with me forever. He believed that educating the youth was the remedy to our fractured and oppressed past. This is why he supported the call for free education. When no one else stood up for us, he did. But what he did stress was respect and tolerance and engagement. This is what we need to remember as the youth. This is what Kathy Papa would have wanted. He stood up for us, and likewise, we should stand up for his memory and chastise anyone who insults or disrespects our stalwarts. Let us not be detracted by petty politics, divisions, and the destruction of property. Let us honor Kathy Papa by treasuring and protecting the values that he stood for, educating the youth, respecting each other, respecting democracy and non-racialism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me again acknowledge stalwarts and veterans of the liberation movement who are here, as well as other family representatives. The first one is Comrade Winnie Madikizela Mandela. Wait. And I'm told she's unable to be here today unless otherwise. Comrade Sophie Williams de Brain. Comrade George Bizos. Comrade Max Sisulu and the entire Sisulu family. Comrade Ilsa Wilson, the daughter of Bram Fisher and her family. Comrade Mosi Miller, that's Mola. Comrade Jassat, Comrade Cheryl Carlos, Comrade Frank Chikane, members of the Molobi and Jardine families, Faisal Randera, the commission of the TRC, our people's historian, Comrade Luli Kalinikos. Comrade Zola Squeia, Comrade Roque Saluji, wife of Baba Saluji. So we'll move on to get a person from the AK youth who is going to give us a tribute for 5 minutes. Where is Busi? That's Busi Ngosi.
Amandla! Amandla! Mayibuye! iAfrika! Thank you. I remember the first time I met you. It was in 2009. Nervous and sweaty, not sure how to address you. Oh yes, people, I was meeting Ahmed Kathrada, the freedom fighter and brother to Mr. Mandela. So I called you Mr. Kathrada. I met you at a crucial time of my life when I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I found a hero in you, a rare gem with a special set of values and integrity, something so hard to find. You and the foundation saw potential in young me. Sometimes I still find it hard to believe. I found the grandfather that I never had in you, and my daughter had a great granddaddy. I still feel jealous though that she makes you smile more than I do. Whenever I see you, my heart comes to life, and your smile just makes my day brighter. Your love for children is just amazing, and that's why our school visits were the best. I will miss introducing you as my friend to the little ones, and you disputing and saying that you've never met me before. I did a school visit yesterday, and without you, I felt so lost for a moment. But you, I shined and made sure I passed on your message to the young people. I will miss your teddy bear hugs and the sly comment asking for a written agreement stating that you can't see me for more than 1 week. I miss me asking you for a husband and you telling me that you'd have to pay the person for them to agree. The last few times you've been using a telescope to search, but with no luck. I'm guessing now you have a better view from above, and so I shall wait for my package, Uncle Kathy. Funny how I moved from Mr. Kathrada to Uncle Kathy and Nana over the years. My thoughts take me back to our very first Robben Island trip with young people. We were stuck and couldn't go onto the island because of the winds. 60 young people, 1 bus, and stranded in Cape Town. What were we to do? Well, you braced the colds with dear Auntie Barbara and came to meet with us, and within 2 hours, we were comfortable and having a lovely meal, courtesy of the two of you. I admire your selflessness during the apartheid and post-apartheid. I will forever cherish the fact that you took your time to take us on a personal tour of the cells on the island each time you did it. It became more special. Your ability not to hate and to forgive are strengths that I'm yet to achieve, but aspire towards. As a young person, I continue to make mistakes on a daily basis, but your words continue to guide me back into the right track. Because of your faith in me, I continue to strive towards being a better me, and no one on this earth has ever made me feel as special as you have. No one has given me as much praises as you have, and I aim to live up to your expectations as hard as it will be. I will continue this race, as you've said to me countless of times. There comes a time where the old must pass the baton on to the youth. I was not thinking it would be this soon, but what can I say? You have fought your fight, you have run your race, and now it's up to us as young people to ensure that other young people remember your words. And the most special words that I hold dear to my heart is, the freedom did not fall from the sky, but was fought for with blood, sweat, and tears. It won't be easy, but it's not meant to be. Your legacy will live on through me and every young person whose life you've touched, and we will continue to educate young people on this man. on this man called Ahmed Kathrada, our beloved Uncle Kathy. Your big brother, Tata Madiba, and Father Tata Sisulu await your arrival. Tell them not to fear for South Africa because you have left change makers behind.
Thank you very much, Comrade Busi. You forgot your book here. You will get it here later on. Can I acknowledge Mrs. Gracia Machel, who is here with us? I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the justices and the former justices that are present here. Is Justice Dirham Moseneke here? I hope he's here. Justice Kathy Satchwell. Now on this one, Justice Satchwell is the one who at a young age, as a young attorney, defended Comrade Barbara Hogan when she was on trial and convicted for treason. Let me also acknowledge Sherin Weimar, who is here. Then I will come back to, is Justice Moseneke here, Sean? In the meantime, I would also like to acknowledge former and current ministers, deputy ministers, premiers, MECs, and mayors, and all representatives, including the most recent former ministers and deputy ministers who are here today. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Amanda. Okay. Maibamba umthetho. Mayihlale phansi. Mayihlale phansi. Mayihlale phansi. Thank you very much. Now, nisuke nahamba phambili. So the first one, I just want to call few by name. Comrade Aaron Mutwaledi is here, the current minister. Thank you very much. Comrade Mwaku Ramatodi. Comrade Mtebisi Jonas. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Amanda. Comrade Derek Hanekom. Comrade Pravin Gordon. Thank you very much. We move on. I would like to call on stage Professor Njabulo Ndebele from the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Amanda. Amanda. You see, the professor is a professor. So you won't say Amanda and you sit down. So I'm doing that for you on his behalf.
Amanda. Barbara and the Kathrada family, I greet you and the nation at large that is represented in this historic hall. In a country with a history like ours, of drama after drama, one should always think twice before declaring the next drama as a crisis. Over time, the word crisis can easily lose the urgency in it. But that is why we also need to be brave and honest enough to utter such words when they are truly called for. Right now, we are in such a moment. And here is what this moment means for me, the crisis. It is a time of great disagreement, a time of confusion, and a time of suffering. There is no doubt that South Africa, our beloved constitutional democracy, barely into its third decade, is at the moment caught in the grip of a deep political and moral crisis. And the respective components of that crisis are two: power and greed. This crisis is by no means the first one since the defeat of the loathed system of apartheid, but it is deeply serious. Ahmed Kathrada, the great, quiet, reflective man of deep conviction and compassion, recognized this moment as it is, a crisis. Do we as citizens understand the integrity and courage it took for him to write an open letter calling on the leader of his political nursery and a lifetime home, the ANC, to step down in order to stop shaming his proud history? This proud movement is the oldest and arguably the most admired liberation movement on the African continent. At a time like this, we look for direction. We cast our eyes around and look for points of convergence that bring us together, a place of understanding and of knowing of who we are and who we have become. Over the last 150 years in the evolution of the South African capitalism, we were conquered, dispossessed, dismembered from family, community, and tribe, and then dispersed across the land as unprotected labor in the mines, in the factories, the farms, and homes of our European conquerors. Then, in 1912, we regrouped in Bloemfontein to commit to a solidarity of the oppressed that held on to those for close to 100 years, we hold on to it. Over that time, we came together, all of us, to experience and exchange one another's languages, cultures, customs, and traditions, such that we could walk into one another's worlds and feel at home. Whether in the Eastern Cape, in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northern Cape, Northwest and the Western Cape, everywhere was a space of our belonging. That was not enough. The space of belonging forged out of the hot depths of the land underground, in the red, smoldering, melted iron and gold, triggered a vast human movement from across the entire Southern African landscape. People came to here from Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, and became a part of us. Others came from far beyond the seas, India, Malaysia, and China, Indonesia, and others. And their sense of self-definition over time came to include who they experienced us to be. We were all became part of this land of an unprecedented transformation of human beings from one state into another. And so it was then that we, all of us, evolved into a people with a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilingual sensibility, open to one another in a democratic, open-minded outlook. It was an achievement of historic proportions. This is who we have become, that should, at this time of crisis, give us further strength to our unity, to our collective sense of purpose, and to our steadfastness. That is why we cannot give up who we have become, cannot give up our hard-won, non-racial, non-sexist, non-ethnic convictions in a constitutional democracy. We cannot give all of that to a subversive system of criminal syndicated government. Criminal syndicated government is a beast that can swallow all of us to oblivion. It should never be allowed to move into its next stage and consolidate itself into a horrible, compulsive system of state repression. It is in the prospect of this horrible possibility that it must have pained Ahmed Kathrada almost beyond description. It is this prospect against which Madiba was willing to lay down his life. It falls on all of us, inheritors of an evolved system of nationhood, to protect our social and political achievement. And in this, we have to be citizens worthy of Ahmed Kathrada. We have to be worthy of that incorruptible man who sat for countless unremunerated hours at board meetings of the Nelson Mandela Foundation and sat there for days after year, helping to decide, helping to select Mandela Rose Scholars. He believed completely in the new generations of young African leaders, and they were open-mouthed in awe at seeing him, something always wonderful to watch, as we heard earlier from the first speaker. So now there is a challenge of conscience I'd like to put before you. It is a challenge to the members of parliament sitting in parliament today. It is a challenge to the members of parliament sitting in parliament today and the ministers and deputy ministers just sworn in. It is a challenge I put from the responsibility and accountability I feel to be part of the Nelson Mandela Foundation that drives the work of Nelson Mandela, never to give up on any human being. It is in this context that we ask of the MPs. We ask the new ministers, is it worth it for you personally, for your families, relatives, friends, and comrades of many years who will suddenly see betrayal in the terrible choices you may have made? If South Africans in their millions are not prepared to give up what they have become, are you willing to give up a universal cause for nondescript, unidentifiable ones? We think, I call on you to think about it. You who suddenly emerged into the light from a list put together in the depths of secrecy. Finally, we all want this beloved country and all of its people to prosper. Let us be brave. Let us do the right thing. These are difficult moments. Let us try not to regret them for our nation and our inaction and be accused of having failed to be courageous. I thank you.
Mandla. Thank you very much. I would like to proceed with the acknowledgement. I've just been reminded that we are here again. This is one platform.
Well, if you've just joined us, you're watching this live broadcast from the City Hall here in Johannesburg, where the official memorial service of the late struggle icon Ahmed Kathrada is underway. Just a few minutes ago, we saw a loud applause for the minister's axed
leaders of the trade union movement, the president of COSATU, Amos Paco. Now, this should be the chair, isn't it, of Gauteng. And the leader of SAFTU, Zwelinzima Vavi. Okay, we're just going to play a small clip. I'm sure my colleagues are ready. Outside.
Thank you so much, Alfred. I'm not even going to try to spoil what you just did, particularly the singing part. I used to be quite good at it when I was young, but I'm not forever young, as you can see. So I'm not going to try. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we know that you speak for so many other actors, singers, and performing people in the United States who are associated with Kathy. So we thank you. And many of them did send their messages last night through email, letter, and they were read out. So we do thank you most sincerely. At this point, so that we don't take too much more of your time, I'd like to ask the one and only, the man that we are all here about, the one and only Ahmed Mohammed Kathrada, to come forward and to say a few words to us. Barbara, don't go away. Stay where you are. It is, I'm sure all of you will admit that it's such a joy to see this expression of so much love and affection. And Kathy always needs Barbara by his side, supporting him, helping him, and even showing him the way to the room where he gets lost sometimes. Kathy, speak to us.
Comrade President and Comrade Deputy President, there are too many of you that I have to identify. So as Cyril and others have said, all protocol observed. However, there are few people I have to identify. Now, Barbara brought me up to the platform, so I think I should start with her. You see, before I went to prison, there was such a thing as an Immorality Act. And I was involved at that time with a young lady as well, who was white. And I asked my father, who was Walter Sisulu, for advice on all sorts of matters. And I said, Chopo, I am involved with this young lady. If I get caught, it can be a political disadvantage to us, going to jail. So he said, my boy, we have fought against all apartheid laws, including the Immorality Act and the Mixed Marriages Act. If you get caught, we are behind you. We didn't get caught, and sometimes I'm sorry that we didn't get caught. And I'll tell you why. If I had got caught, I would have got 6 months. I didn't get caught, so I got life. Now, Barbara, a bit about her. She doesn't want to tell her own story about prison, and I told her she is selfish. I said she's selfish because she went to prison for herself. She didn't go to prison for the people. Why doesn't she write? Because unfortunately a lot is being written about Robben Island as if there was no other prison in South Africa. 1 or 2 books have been written about our white male comrades. 1 book has been written about our female comrades. And the country must know. And they must stop being selfish and keep these experiences to themselves. Now, one thing I want to relate about Barbara. After 10 years of knowing her, she casually tells me something about how she tried to escape from prison. As if it was just another thing. It so happened that she was taken to the hospital for some ailment, and just by accident, she saw 2 of her friends there. I don't know how she managed, but she managed to tell them she's going to come back in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks elapsed, and this 2 friends, heavily disguised, came there, and Barbara was accompanied by 1 wardress. And these friends of Barbara, who were heavily disguised, tapped this wardress on the shoulder and said, look, you've dropped something. You've dropped your wallet. And as she turned on, they sprayed something in her eyes, and she collapsed. Now, there were a lot of hobos, and the hobos in the hospital, they always like it when you fight the police. So she told Barbara, run this way, run this way. And she ran, but unfortunately for her, a Rhodesian doctor brought her down in a rugby tackle. And, but now she had a very, very, very good lawyer. And as soon as these chaps, her friends, as soon as they saw Barbara's been caught, they ran to her lawyer, and her lawyer immediately went to the prison. Said, is this the way you treat my client? She's about to be kidnapped. And you send her to prison with one wardress. So she put up such a strong case, they did not charge Barbara for trying to escape. But that's one story. Now I have been boasting to President Mandela, to President Mbeki, and now to President Zuma. They cannot claim what I can claim. In the terms of President President Mandela and President Mbeki, they couldn't claim that they had a member of parliament as the driver. I had.
Mandela. No, thank you very much. Can we clap our hands again? Now, before I call Comrade Barbara to the stage, I would like to once again acknowledge former Minister and Comrade Musa Vali. And acknowledge business leaders who are here, including Bonang Mohale from the Business Leadership South Africa, Venkat from Anglo Gold, Kes Kuvadia, Maria Ramos and her husband, Comrade, former Minister Trevor Manuel. And Jabu Mabuza, who could not be here, but sent a note of support for this event here. So without any waste of time, with Ingoma, can we call on stage Comrade Barbara Hogan, the wife of the late Kathrada, a revolutionary in a whole Now, Comrade Barbara is not just a wife, but in her own right is the leader of the democratic movement, the founder of the UDF. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I greet you in the name, firstly, of the wonderful Kathrada family, in whose midst Kathy grew up, who supported him in prison, who took pride in him when he came out, nurtured and sustained him, and when he was in his darkest hours, loved, cared, and supported him. A huge thank you to the Kathrada family for what they have done for our country. Lots of people are very curious. They always say, how did you and Cassie get together? Well, you know, you released 2 old jailbirds who don't know how this world operates. And so we were like shelter from the storm for each other. I always remember Cassie, myself, and our lady Siki trying to cross Sour Street in the midst of the traffic. And we'd like venture across and then scurry back and go across, and we couldn't do it. And you know what? Although Cassie, Madiba, and all of our great leaders performed like professionals in the public domain, let us not forget how much it took from themselves, from their personal lives, the adjustments they had to make to a great and changed and vastly changed world. Cassie was a fighter to the last. In hospital, we had to battle with him. He didn't like, he was put in a chair so for a couple of hours every morning to prevent pneumonia. And his carer would tell me that he'd swing his legs over the side of the chair and try and get back on the bed before she caught him. There was a moment when they were trying to put a drip for nutrition purposes into a central vein here. And he fought them off. And he said to them, I know my rights. And it just so happened that it was Human Rights Day. And the wonderful Dr. Butler said, I could not go further. Not Ahmed Kathrada, not on Human Rights Day. And such is the stature of Cassie. We love him, and he's a man of the people, and we love him because of that. In his last year, a man of 86, 87, performed 186 public engagements. And this wasn't the high and mighty engagements at Sandton convention centers and those places. They were schools. They were colleges. They were universities. They were trade union meetings. It was business meetings. It was in people's homes. Cassie never ceased to love engaging with ordinary people. We used to fight with him and say, Cassie, this is too much. And he just loved it. And I, and all of us who've been close to him, are so exceptionally privileged to have spent the last 27 years of his life with this man who was so engaged, so busy, so witty, so funny, so wise, and so incredibly principled. And in all the pain that I've been suffering and all the grief that I feel, I just say thank you for those wonderful years with you. Cassie, for me, what was so special about Cassie were two aspects of him. Firstly, he was a great soul. Cassie reached, during those Robben Island years and even before then, he had to reach deep down into his soul and himself, together with his fellow prisoners, to grasp and understand a fate which said that you were going to be imprisoned and die in prison. A young man of 34 who went to prison and knew he would die there. Under those circumstances, and with how perilous the struggle was, Cassie and his fellow comrades reached deep down into themselves, and they came out with universal truths. They came out with a huge, generous understanding of the human condition, its frailty and its strengths. And that is why we are here today. We are here to support and endorse and celebrate the values of an extraordinary generation who led us out of the wilderness into democracy. Let me quote one of the most quoted pieces that Cassie wrote. And it's his writing, and it characterizes Cassie's approach. And I quote, "While we will not forget the brutality of apartheid, we will not want Robben Island to be a monument of our hardship and suffering. We would want it to be a triumph of the human spirit." A triumph of the human spirit against the forces of evil. A triumph of wisdom and largeness of spirit against small minds and pettiness. A triumph of courage and determination over human frailty and weakness. A triumph of the new South Africa over the old. Unquote. And that is our anthem now. We are going to triumph. The triumph of our democracy, the triumph of the very human spirit, its deeply embedded non-racialism, is the values on which we all here are founded and which we will die for. I want to quote Madiba's reflections on Cassie. He writes, "Walter Sisulu and Cassie share one common feature which forms an essential part of our friendship and which I value very much. They never hesitate to criticize me. They never hesitate to criticize me for my mistakes, and throughout my political career have served as a mirror from which I can see myself." Would it be that our current generation of leaders held Cassie's advice and wisdom in the same esteem as the leadership of Robben Island and our leadership which brought us to victory? Instead, they are so fearful of even his voice that they saw fit to cancel his commemoration because they were afraid it was going to become Today we stand here. Today we stand here and we say we will not be silenced, nor will he ever. Mr. President, Mr. President, do you have ears to hear and eyes to see? When you drive past in those cavalcades which have multiplied because you have become so paranoid, do you see those people pulling a wooden wagon behind them and scraping dustbins to eke out a living? Do you hear them? Do you see them? Mr. President, do you hear, do you see all the millions of social grantees who lived in absolute anxiety and fear that they might not have an income next month? Did you hear? Did you see? No, you didn't. Do you feel? Do you hear? Do you see the pain of everyone who's been flung into unemployment as our economy hits rock bottom? One unemployed person has at least 5 people dependent on them. Do you not understand that millions and millions of people need jobs? But instead, you have sacrificed everything we have stood on the altar of corruption, greed, and more greed. If you had eyes to hear, ears to hear, and eyes to see, you would have not appointed 4 finance ministers in less than 3 years. You would not have recalled our finance minister, one of our finest finance ministers, from an international roadshow. You would not be pursuing a nuclear deal that will be the destruction of all of us. And you would have fired Face Mutambi and Batabile Dlamini. And finally, Mr. President, if you had ears to hear and eyes to see, you would step down as Kathrada. Mr. President, this country is not for sale, and a people united will never be defeated. I thank you.
Mandla. Mandla. Thank you very much, Comrade Barbara. Without any waste of time, we will move on. First, let me acknowledge Comrade Joe Pata, who is the Deputy Minister and a member of the NEC. Acknowledge representatives of academic institutions, including the Vice Chancellor of VETS, Professor Adam Habib. Now, we're entering another phase of our program. I think we've been doing very well so far. But looking at the speakers coming here, let me just emphasize that you've got 3 minutes to speak so that we finish early. So I'm going to start with Business Leadership South Africa, which is represented by Mr. Bonang Mohale, to come onto the stage. Let me also acknowledge, I didn't do that, the entire Mandela family. So is Bonang here? Thank you very much.
So we thank you, Uncle Kathy, for teaching us that the best amongst us lead with a heart of a servant. We thank you also for always insisting to always ask the question, how are our people going to be better led by a leadership that deeply commits on the basis of full understanding? We thank you, Uncle Kathy, for giving us the opportunity to be truly and genuinely be in the presence of dignified greatness from the very best of black excellence. We thank you for having taught us that leadership is for all of us who feel called upon to lead, that you don't need a corner office, a title, but just a commitment to improving the quality of lives of those that are less fortunate than yourself. We thank you also for teaching us that leadership, it's about talking straight, it's about starting first with the who, then the what. It's about extending trust, it's about finding it easy to acknowledge others, being the other, not self-centered. We thank you also for giving us an opportunity to be the young crop of leadership, whose job it is to be continuously committed to the South Africa of Rolihlahla, Nelson Mandela's dreams, because he wanted us to be the best nation in the world. As we continue searching for that elusive dream of nation building to attain inclusive economic growth in our lifetime, so that we can indeed be a cohesive society. We thank you also for teaching us to go back into our state-owned enterprises, to share the little that we have learned, to ensure that these state-owned enterprises, some of them that have a market cap, therefore a net asset value greater than most African countries, can be well led, adequately capitalized, where cooperative governance becomes the norm, not the exception. And to look after these assets the same way that the Afrikaners used them to empower their own people and therefore eliminate the so-called poor Afrikaner. Thank you, sir. So that we can continue to ensure that these assets are well looked after. In the case of ESCOM, that planned preventative maintenance is done regularly, because if we don't do that, very soon we'll be starting to thank the fish for swimming. Lastly, we thank you for giving us the courage to go and serve and lend our hand in age-old institutions. This 50-plus-year-old black organization called NAFCOC, of Ntate Sam Mutswenyane, Richard Maponya, and E.T. Chabalala. To serve in the FABCOS of Babu Jabu Mabuza, in the Black Management Forum of Professor Wiseman Nkutlu, Lord Maduken Dlovu, of Humphrey Khoza, of Don Mukwanas. We thank you, Uncle Kathy, for restoring our dignity, so that as a people with great natural endowment, we can walk tall in the face of self-created crisis. Where we continue to score our own goals, to cut our nose, to spite our face. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonang. Let me just continue with the acknowledgements. Leaders of civil society organizations and formations that are here. That includes Lawyers for Human Rights, Legal Resources Center, Save South Africa, Equal Education, Social Justice Coalition, Treatment Action Campaign, Black Sash, Section 27, Corruption Watch, Democratic Left Front. And the next on the supposed to come on the stage is COSATU chairperson, Mr. Monyela. So we should occupy the aisles because outside the crowd is, there's no space. So we need to come in and sit on the aisles. So is Kosatu here? Oh, okay.
Oh, sibambonga siyekele Gwalibatambo 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 Mandla awethu all power to the people long live the spirit of Umkethi, long live. Long live the spirit of Umkethi, long live. Amandla. Chairperson, may I say, protocol observed. We are coming here in this memorial service to pay our tribute to one of the giants of our struggles as workers and the working class, but mostly to the society, the equal society of South Africa. We are only going to quote 2 quotations and not explain them. One which is attributed to the lessons that we ought to have learned from the life of Umkethi, Comrade Kethi, our giant, is hatred, revenge, bitterness. These are negative emotions. The person harboring these emotions suffers more. The second quotation being that of the choices that we can make, may it be we choose to inspire hope than fear. These are the lessons that we are taking from the life Comrade Kethi would have lived in South Africa, and also what we would have learned and experienced, the love of the younger generation in South Africa, hoping therefore that the South Africans, young, old, whoever that we are from our corners, that will always be inspiring that there is hope in South Africa, and we're making sure that those that are coming after us are going to be finding a South Africa that has possibilities. Amandla.
Thank you very much. I hope that the following speakers will follow the direction that Comrade from Kwasatu has provided us with. So I'm going to call the next speaker. The next speaker is from the ANC in Gauteng, who shall speak for 3 minutes, and that's Comrade Brian Hlongwa.
Amandla, Program Director, Auntie Barbara, the Kathrada family, veterans and stalwarts of our great movement. On behalf of the ANC Provincial Executive Committee of Gauteng, on whose behalf I speak. Firstly, I acknowledge also the presence in our midst of various veterans and indeed some leaders of our Revolutionary Alliance from national, provincial, and regional. The spear has fallen. The irony is we are gathered this year, which has been declared the year of Oliver Reginald Tambo, whose theme is Let's Deepen Unity. There seems to be a credibility gap between what we proclaim and what we do. Our understanding as democratically elected leaders of the ANC in Gauteng is that the ANC does not exist for its own sake. That the ANC, on behalf of the people, has a historical mandate of leading, organizing, educating the people of South Africa. The mantle of being called the leader of society is not in our DNA. It's something that we must earn. If there was ever a time that those that Uncle Katie has left behind must call themselves leaders, we need to accept the following. Number one, there is no struggle without casualties. No matter how wide the patronage network might be, no matter how deep some pockets might be, no matter how mighty and powerful others might think they are, there is no amount of force that can stop an idea whose time has come. Lastly, I am aware that we are living now in an era of what is called alternative facts. The notion of fake news does exist. But this is what we want to commit ourselves to, Auntie Barbara. They might torture our bodies, break our bones, but our souls are intact, and our souls are not for sale. As I take my seat, we want to declare, as we prepare for our policy conference, as we read various documents from the strategy and tactics, which talks about enhancing the integrity of the ANC. There seems to be a confluence of evil forces that want to ensure that that does not happen. They can be called by their name. And the issue of being a minister or a former minister is not an issue. For those who temporarily think they're in charge in this country, they must know that when our forebears proclaimed that there is no government that can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of the people. Now, program director, like I stated, the ANC does not exist for itself. I know some of us are delusional, think that 1 million members of the ANC can amongst themselves decide for society. Without the people, there is no ANC. We are ready, willing, and available. We are willing to do what must be done, to stand by the truth, and to tell the truth to power. And thank you, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Comrade Brian. Amanda. Can I just continue with the acknowledgements? That is leaders of youth organizations, including Zuleika Patel, the young leader who protested about her hairdo. Fatima and Ismail Mia's daughters, Shinaz, Roshan Dadu, daughter of the chairperson of the South African Communist Party, Comrade Dadu. Now, we're going towards the end of the program. I'm going to call on stage the second Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Comrade Soli Mapaila. Whilst he's coming on stage, let me also acknowledge Comrade Dalimpofu from the EFF, Khalid Kachalia from the Democratic Alliance. Good.
Amanda, Mata, all power. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. Long live the undying spirit of Comrade Kathrada. Long live. Long live the undying spirit of Comrade Kathrada. Long live. Thank you very much. Aunt Barbara, Ogen, the Kathrada family, Comrade Lalo, and all our struggle stalwarts, Mama Shell, leadership of the movement present here, NEC members of the ANC. I've seen several of them, Comrade Ntwaledi, Matole Mutsecha, Joe Patla, and others I may not have seen. Leadership of the Central Committee of the SACP, Mandela Masuku, John Bisi, Jacob Mamabolo, our Provincial Secretary. Comrade Amos Munyela from Kosatu. Religious leaders, ministers and deputy ministers, and of course, the leadership of the foundations, both the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation as well as the Nelson Mandela Foundation, for their good coordination and cooperation to take the legacy of our movement forward, and also for organizing this excellent memorial, as well as to Ahmed Kathrada Foundation for the excellent organization of the funeral of Kathy. We want to express solidarity to Chairman of the Foundation, Comrade Derek Hanekom. Comrade Pravin Gordhan, we have been attacked that we are captured by Pravin Gordhan. Now, I want to say to those who say that yes, we are captured by the values of our movement, the African National Congress. That is truthful. Minister Ibrahim Patel is also here. He's a serving minister, Comrade Mandela. He's not removed. We want to first extend again our condolences to the Kathrada family and to Comrade Barbara Hogan and the broader National Liberation Movement. The stalwarts of our movement, the 1001 plus, I don't know the seniority, but I can say Umampa Brahma Sekela, on behalf of all our stalwarts, I've greeted them in that order. There are many here, from the Little Detachment members to the current last generation that entered the stalwart age. It will be unfair that we take this platform to honor one of our greatest sons, not only of South Africa, but of humanity, a revolutionary giant who dedicated his entire life to fighting injustice, an activist of our movement, that we sit to bid farewell to him and not talk to the challenges that we face today as a liberation movement. This is not to abuse funerals and memorial services of our leaders as it is made to believe. It is the platform to reflect on their example and their lives. It is a platform to reflect what made these giants of our struggles to be what they are and why we follow their leadership and example. For the SACP, Comrade Kathy represented the golden generation of the South African Revolution, the one that fought injustice, of capitalist barbarism, of racial bigotry, and subsequently endured heavy harassment and ill treatment, including torture of various forms by the apartheid and colonial regimes. This generation endured all you can think about, and so the day of victory for a South Africa to transit towards democracy. Democracy is a collective process. Democracy is not about individuals working for themselves and their families at the expense of the country. Democracy, it's about all the people of South Africa believing in the dream and living the dream of prosperity, of unity, of sovereignty, of non-racialism, of non-sexism. What we see in this hall today, which has been the hallmark of Comrade Ahmed Kathrada's political life. About a year ago, Comrade Kathy decided not to fail his country again when he wrote a letter to the president. And I must say that he made his letter public. One of our stalwart, Comrade Lalo, got ill sometime, and I took time to go and see him, to wish him well, several weeks ago. And I asked him, I know you are not well, but we're here just to wish you well. But how are you doing? How are you coping? He said, I'm trying, but it is hard, much more from the political space. I think a lot about it, such that I actually wrote a letter to the president. We have only known about the open letter of Kathy. But Comrade Lalo, I'm sorry I revealed the secret. He did say, I've written a letter personally to the president, and he has not yet replied. Many of our stalwarts have done the same. Their letters have been ignored. Attempts to meet with our movement were made. In many instances, they were ridiculed. The Communist Party had a meeting with them, our stalwarts. We had a very frank and robust discussion. They criticized us, and we accepted their criticism. After the meeting, Mam Barbara says, well, we had thought this was going to be a difficult meeting, but it turned out differently. We said, why? They reflected on how they were not well treated by their mother movement. Now, we want to say, as the Communist Party, our struggling heroes and heroines who dedicated their entire life so that we can be free, when they speak, when they caution us, we must listen as the younger generation. We should be able to accord them the necessary respect and courtesy, even if we differ with them. We understand that conditions change all the time, but the best we could do is to acknowledge their deep concerns. In writing his letter, Comrade Kathy said the following, I want to quote. This recklessness, this is his letter to the president. I am not a political analyst, but I'm now driven to ask, dear Comrade President, don't you think your continued stay as president will only serve to deepen the crisis of confidence in the government of the country? Close quote. Yesterday, we convened a meeting of the Politburo of the SACP and arrived almost at the same conclusion with Comrade Kathy. I want to quote part of our statement. It says, this recklessness has provoked widespread concern and anger within the ANC itself and across all sectors of our society. We have reached a decisive moment in which, in the considered view of the SACP leadership, President Zuma must now resign. Close quote. It is quite clear, comrades. It is quite clear, comrades, and I think that Comrade Brian Tongo spoke here on behalf of the ANC in the province and was quite clear. I'll jump some of the portions here because he quoted also from the preamble of the Freedom Charter quite clearly, talking about the mission of the ANC. That the ANC is not created for itself, but for the people. It's an instrument at the behest of the people to liberate themselves. It is quite clear, therefore, that the ANC at this moment, as well as the alliance movement as a whole, have a choice to make. Either President Zuma or the people of South Africa. The ANC must choose either the people of this country or the Guptas. Who are wreaking havoc in the state and governance system. And we have proclaimed this point, that at this conjuncture of our revolution, at this moment, governance and good governance is a critical pillar of our revolution. That is why we can't understand and even accept the removal of ministers who were the symbol of good governance, like Pravin Gordhan and Derek Haneko, and Deputy of Pravin Davis Jonas. It boggles the mind how one comes to a decision of that nature. But we understand this because the notion of the prerogative right has been poisoned. Now, if that right has been poisoned and actually gravitated away from the ANC political center, it is now abused not only by the president, but his cronies, particularly the Guptas. We are therefore calling on our people to stop the moral and political decay of the ANC and revitalize the dream of South Africa of building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa. We think, lastly, comrades, that the time has arrived. They say, sometimes in society or in a revolution, this was said by Comrade Lenin. I want to quote him. He said, which described the moment we are in now, which requires decisive action from all of us. He says, there are times when days become decades, and decades become days. Close quote. What he was aptly trying to explain was that the decades of sacrifice of our leaders, President Mandela, President Tambo, Albert Lutuli, Joe Slovo, Ahmed Kathrada, and many others, all their decades of sacrifice can be vanquished and vanished in few days by the misconduct of leadership. That is why we have to come out and save our movement. Once again, we want to take this opportunity to express our sincere condolences to the family, Comrade Barbara, to wish you strength, as well as the Kathrada family during these most difficult times. And to our veterans, your activities that you produced in the terrain of struggles are available to continue the mission. The relay continues. Amandla! Long live Ahmed Kathrada, long live! Thank you very much, Comrade.
Manda. Thank you very much, Comrade Soli. Just before I call the next speaker, I would like to call Professor Pitiga Ntuli just to do a very short poem. Is the professor here? Oh, yeah.
Stand here. Comrade Barbara and the Kathrada family and all protocols observed. A people united will never be defeated. Kathy, you walked amongst us with the ease of a summer breeze, with unassuming grace, and with a smile always twitching in the corners of your lips. Despite the vicissitudes of your life, 26 years of monotonous days could not drown your enthusiasm for love and for laughter. You loved us, and we loved you too, unconditionally. You spoke your mind. You called a spade, unafraid, undaunted. To you, I dedicate this poem, an ode to the land of our ancestors. A dark cloud hangs over our beloved land. Night is gathering and owls hoot their omens, and chickens scurry away to informal settlements and settlers. Vultures of greed sharpen their talons. Names of the holy and the sacred are vilified. The innocent suffer by and for the errors of the guilty. To paraphrase Yeats, the Irish poet, things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon our beloved land. Before then, civil strife and downright defiance will order our days. We shall walk in the dark like fireflies, soft and tender with a flight. They can loot the state, but not the voices of redemption and the justice of our cause. Read large in the tired eyes of our elderly and the bright children of our land, whose future they suck like marrow in the bones of our bloody history. They will call us names, they will lie about us, and even assassinate us, but we know that history will absolve us. The dreams of Madiba, of Biko, of Ahmed Timol, of Sobukwe, of Ngoyi, of Ruth First, of Charlotte Matleke, betrayed at the bloody altar of greed. I lay my neck on the block. Bring your corrupted axe, wield with a vengeance relish, then strike. Even as my head rose, I will smile, for history is on our side. A people united will never be defeated.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. Let me once again acknowledge the South African Council of Churches, the leadership that is here, in particular Bishop Mpumlwana. Now, again, acknowledge the leadership of the ANC at various levels: national leadership, provincial leadership, regional leadership, and the alliance, that is COSATU and the South African Communist Party. Now, it is my pleasure to call on stage a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, until yesterday, the Finance Minister of the Republic of South Africa, Amanda. Amanda. Now, that is Comrade Pravin Gordon, who is my boss.
Amandla. Viva ANC, viva. This ANC is still our ANC. Viva the Alliance, viva. Assalamu alaikum, Sanbonani, Namaste, Vanakkam, Dumelang, Shalom. Let me acknowledge Barbara Hogan and the Kathrada family and convey my condolences and the condolences of my family as well, the leadership of the Kathrada and Mandela Foundation, and leaders of the ANC and Alliance, my former colleagues, ministers and deputy ministers, leading activists from the NGOs who've played a marvelous role, particularly over the last year or so, and fellow patriots. One of the things that used to happen regularly in the few occasions that I used to knock into Kathy at one meeting or the other, and without fail, he would say, "Here's the tax man. I've paid all my taxes." And I hope all of you do as well. So whoever is the finance minister, they still require your taxes. I said to Barbara as I was walking past that I'm going to expose a little bit about her and my first meetings with her around 1980, 1981. And at that time we were meeting in the household or house of the Coleman family and discussing how an insurrection can take place in South Africa and what would be required to bring together people to defeat the apartheid enemy. And a few months later, a group of activists in Joburg were detained, and in her case went to prison for 10 years, and another group of activists in Durban were also detained and released some 6 months later. But there were activists throughout the country who were similarly detained and jailed at some stage or the other. So in Barbara, you have a lifelong revolutionary, pretty much like Comrade Kathy. And you can see the fire with which she speaks when she addresses us here. And it's a spirit that will continue, I'm sure, to inspire all of us as we go forward. Comrade Kathy leaves behind, no, yes, please clap for her. We have to regrettably say that Comrade Kathy leaves us at a time when the ANC, our democratic government, and indeed our society finds itself in a mini crisis. At the same time, he leaves us at a time when we can't say we're confused about what the problems are. He leaves us at a time when the problems are very clear. And who is the problem and what is the problem is very clear as well. Don't read too much into the who part of it. He also leaves us at a time, and this is something that we need to talk about in every household, in every workplace, in every university, in every village. And that is, how do we connect all the dots of the events that are going on around us? Because that is going to help us to understand what is the nature of the crisis that we face. Connect the dots, remember those words. Because looking at each dot on its own won't help us. Draw the line between the dots. Who is doing what? What are they doing it for? All the previous speakers have brought that to your attention. And who benefits as a result of the things that are actually happening? But he also leaves us at a time, fellow patriots, where it's very clear that we need to act and act together if we are to do something about the dots that we are connecting. He also leaves us at a time when many of the solutions that we require to set this country back on its democratic, non-racial and non-sexist path, where people shall govern, that solution is also clear. As a former member of the government, one day old, let me say fairly publicly and openly that I think postponing, inverted commas, the official memorial was petty and spiteful. Nothing should get in the way of celebrating the lives and contribution and the lessons of what many people at this platform have called the golden generation. Nothing should stop him. So, comrades and friends, Kathy's life as an activist, as a Democrat, as a humanitarian, must enable us not only to celebrate that life and remember the values that he promoted and lived, but more importantly, given that we find ourselves in what I'm still calling a mini crisis, hopefully it doesn't grow beyond that, but in this mini crisis, we must actually ask ourselves, what will Kathy the activist do? What will he, if he were the commander-in-chief of an army of democratic activists, wearing different colored T-shirts? The color of the T-shirt doesn't matter, as long as you are a Democrat. The first thing he will say is ask yourself, what's really the truth of all the events that are going around us? What's really going on? Don't accept the superficial nonsense that we hear. Above all, don't accept the fake news. And even the fake channels, by the way, you know the one I'm talking about. How they get away in a democratic South Africa with a broadcasting commission and a broadcasting law is unbelievable. I know many of you, if not all of you, are subscribers to something. But that something needs to be asked. What is this propaganda channel, which is akin to Nazi Googleism? What is this Google tradition? You all know Google, by the way, or Goebbels. Let me test you. How many of you know Goebbels or heard of him? It's too few of you. He was Hitler's propaganda chief. That's the propaganda that constantly attacks any one of you that will stand up and say something's wrong in this country. That is the channel, and those who are masterminds behind it. There's one word starts with a B and another one starts with a P. You'll work that one out. Because where does this sophistication come from? That's the kind of question Kathy will ask you to answer, so that we understand where the truth lies. He will also say to all of us, don't go home now and say, what a lovely meeting we had at City Hall. How inspiring it was, and then go back to some normality. He will say to each one of you, what in your own ordinary life, in a small and humble way, can you promote or do in order to bring about better change and a greater and more resilient democracy? Ask yourself that question. And through that active participation, particularly to activists of the Alliance and in the Alliance, he will say it is time to unite and fight the weaknesses in our movement and do everything possible to make sure that the Mandela, Sisulu, Tambo, Kathrada values are reinstilled in our movement. So that's what we practice every day. He will ask us to constantly watch what we as government, well, used to be, do every day. What do the 1.3 million civil servants do every day? What do the 350,000 people who work in municipalities and get paid with your money, what do they do every day? Is their entire focus and energy and resources committed to ensuring that the poor, the working class, and the middle class in particular are the beneficiaries of the money that is spent? Or is it going into some bank account somewhere? He will say to you, as Bonang said earlier on, that the state-owned companies are our companies. They belong to South Africans, not to the CEO, not to the board, not to the government. And he will say, where are all these billions of rands going? in terms of procurement or contracts or tendering, call it whatever you will. Are those managers really accountable to you? How is it that a structure, and I'm going to name it like Danel, now goes to court against the Treasury and says, get out of our way. We still want to continue with this Danel Asia venture with a company called VR Laser. And notwithstanding all the things that are in the public domain, you can go to hell. You must get out of our way. Now, that's the relationship between state capture and getting away with things. So if you want to understand what state capture means, that's what it means. So our first challenge, comrades and ladies and gentlemen, is that we need to get this organization of ours into a shape that will ensure that we truly have a people's movement committed to the mission that was defined in 1912 and beautifully articulated in the Freedom Charter. But secondly, this movement is the movement that governs this country. And when three senior officials, the Deputy President, the Secretary General, and the Treasury General, all say within 24 hours of each other, we don't know where these decisions are made, then there's something to worry about. And just in case somebody wants to report us to some disciplinary committee or whatever, at the next NEC meeting, we will say it in the meeting as well. The next challenge Kathy will ask us to look at is what is this animal called state capture? And what does it actually mean for ordinary people? Why should you be afraid of this animal? Because you can disregard it. Most of it goes over our heads anyway. We should be afraid because when you spend almost R1 trillion on infrastructure each year, if not more, in South Africa, then we have to ask the question, is that R1 trillion being spent in a way in which our economy is more efficient, our logistics is more effective, and above all, our cities are now becoming more dense and closer and overcoming the apartheid legacy, and that ordinary people are going to have lower transport costs, shorter distances to travel, and have a more productive and decent life than they've had before. Those are the questions we need to ask. Where's the R1 trillion being spent? And where some of us ask this question, we get into trouble for that. Secondly, Kathy will ask us to look at whether that same state resource, we spend 1.4 trillion rands as a government on average in the next 2 to 3 years. Where is that being spent? How much is being extracted for the benefit of small groups of people? Why is it that 95% of the people's wealth is owned in equivalence terms by only 10% of South Africans? Is that kind of inequality sustainable inequality? He didn't sacrifice his life so that we can have that kind of inequality in our society between the top 10% and the rest of the 90%. Something needs to be done about that. Is our money being spent effectively, as previous speakers said as well, to create the jobs that are required in the society in partnership with both social enterprises and the private sector as well? We're stuck in that regard. The state-owned companies, on the one hand, we talk about the mission, Minister Manuel, former Minister Manuel, I think I can call somebody else former. In the National Development Plan, we talk about a capable and developmental state, right? But are these state-owned companies contributing to a capable and developmental state? Is the question every day, whilst you're relaxing in your lounges, you should actually ask. Why did the grants tender go wrong? Comrade Barbara referred to this earlier on. Why aren't we listening to what the highest court in this country asks us to do some 3 years ago? That is when suddenly many of us become gymnasts. We engage in blame shifting. Let's see if we can include the Treasury somewhere. So if something does go wrong, we blame the Treasury for it. That's the recent phenomenon that's been taking place. Instead of being adult and saying, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and in fact, if you were really adult, you will say, I was doing some favors for some people. But it's also time, ladies and gentlemen and fellow patriots, for the private sector in South Africa to come to the party increasingly, pretty much as they did over the last 15 months. And you must congratulate the leaders of the CEO movement. They have played a fantastic role. I also want you to applaud the leaders of our trade union federations, the 3 federations, who a year ago, and when we were called back, they were going to join us as well, who went out to meet investors and ratings agencies and so on, and saying South Africa is a good place to invest in. South Africa is a reliable debtor. We will pay our debt. And you can lend us more money when we actually require it. That's what the so-called roadshow was about. It wasn't, and I'll come back to this point in a moment, about meeting secretly with somebody in terms of the so-called intelligence report. It was a very unintelligent intelligence report. The one thing Kathy will ask us to watch out for is that state capture mustn't become economic sabotage. In other words, you become so greedy, chase money to such an extent, think about only yourself and whoever else is in your company entirely or solely, and forget about the 55 million people. And in the process, say, you see the economy is only growing at 1%. Whereas the resources that are available should in fact be used for the benefit of this economy growing, creating jobs, giving us more revenue, so that decent living conditions can be created for all of our people. So there are certain industries that are being targeted at the moment. And if that particular sector of our economy, which has a long history, so it's a quiz contest for you now, if that sector is being managed in the way it is being managed currently, and we don't do something about stopping the mismanagement, then we're going to lose tens of thousands of jobs. We're going to lose tens of billions of investment. And we're going to lose the opportunity for large numbers of people to actually benefit from those sorts of investments. So watch out, South Africa, that we don't reduce ourselves to economic sabotage, which can have long-term consequences and take us another 5 or 10 years to actually recover from. Kathy, I'm sure at some stage would have told Barbara, I'm observing certain things that seem to be suggestive of a streak of authoritarianism creeping into our system. And we are a vibrant society that has a long history of mass mobilization and mass organization. This channel last night was actually saying, I'm now encouraging mass mobilization. Yes, I'm unashamedly encouraging mass mobilization. And there are many of my comrades in the NEC and in government who will say the same if they had a chance here. But we're not doing it for its own sake. We're doing it because we do believe, as previous speakers have said, that the people shall govern. And you can't govern if you just remain in your comfortable lounge, wherever it might be. You've got to come out, become organized, become part of something. You can't have democratic accountability of us. All the ministers that are here will agree with me. You must hold us accountable. You must call us more frequently to meetings like this and say, in your portfolio, why did you do this? Explain this to me. Where are you going? How is it going to benefit ordinary South Africans? That's accountability. Parliament is not the only instrument in a democratic society governed by a democratic constitution where accountability takes place. It takes place everywhere in the country. So just maybe three last points. The first is, what is a roadshow? You see, the most experienced minister is here. Maybe I should call him to explain. We do 2 of these so-called roadshows usually every year. After the budget in February and after the medium-term budget policy statement, late October, early November. The purpose of a roadshow is to meet people who've got 2 trillion rands worth of their money lent to the South African government. And they want to know, how is your economy growing? How are you going to grow faster? How are you going to overcome inequality in your society? Where's this new growth going to actually come from? What's this latest protest about? Do you have political stability in your country? Are you going to ensure that what you tell us is what you're going to do? Can we believe you? And we start usually 7 in the morning and finish late at night. On Monday, when we landed at Heathrow Airport, the Director General and myself, we get this SMS which says, come back. So that's fine. But we then decided that the flights are in the evening, so we'll change our flights and we'll take that flight the same evening. And met 2 ratings agencies in the morning. Then met about 50-odd investors who have amongst them $5 trillion to invest. And before we left, we had a teleconference with a 3rd rating agency because that appointment was for the following day and we couldn't keep that appointment. That's all we were doing. Now there's this wonderful intelligence report which says, I don't know if the Deputy Minister is really here. Is he here? What we were doing, that's another story. The Deputy Minister was in South Africa. He wasn't with me. But he was asked to come back. So that's telling the truth that Kathy would have asked us to say. Okay? So my time is up, I'm told, but I have to tell you a few things still. So this intelligence report says we went out to meet certain people in order to sabotage our economy. Now, why on earth will be activists and bureaucrats who've given 20 years, in the case of the bureaucrats, activists for much longer periods, I'm going to tell you my age right now, who have committed themselves to democracy and are trying to do their best to, as Comrade Solly said, contribute to good governance in our own humble way. Why would they want to go out there to sabotage this economy so that all of your pension investments and other things are going to be affected? So those are lies. That's not even fake news. The second thing was that I made a phone call. A journalist tells me this yesterday. And my phone is tapped. I made a phone call to a certain person. I later on get the name. Some of you know him, Lord Rennick, who works for a particular international bank, who's organized many meetings for South African ministers and bureaucrats with mining and other investors over the years. So I'm now supposed to be conspiring with Lord Rennick in an anti-South African agenda. That's the second lie. The third is that either the Director General or myself or both of us said, nuclear is out for South Africa. Now, we all have different views on that. But at the lunchtime session or event, there was one lady who asked the question, where are you going with nuclear? And we have a standard answer. And the standard answer is that nuclear is part of the energy mix described in the Integrated Resource Plan, number one. Number two, the Department of Energy has indicated the path we're going at the moment. Number three, the President, myself, and others have said very clearly that we will do nuclear on the basis of what we can afford at each stage over the next 10 or 20 years, or whenever, and however long it takes. But there's this, tweet that's moving around. And there's a gentleman, Russian gentleman with a C as his first initial of his surname, who allegedly was in this, somewhere there, who heard somehow that nuclear is off the table completely, phoned somebody very important in South Africa, and that's why we got called back. That's also a lie. So let me conclude, because I think it's important that you should know the facts from us directly, and you can communicate it to as many people as you can. I want to conclude by saying that this event should remind us of the long history of mass mobilization and mass involvement in our country. It should remind us that throughout our history, activists like Kathy and his generation and many generations before and after have fought against greed, they've fought against selfishness, they've asked us to be honest servants, to engage in as much public service as we can and promote the interests of the country ahead of the interests of any small group or set of individuals. And all one can do is to say that even in the modern era of populism as it is sweeping through Europe and other parts of the world, don't believe false populism. Let's go back to our democratic tradition, strengthen the state, strengthen the ANC, strengthen mass formations of our people wherever we actually find them, and make sure that we control our democratic path. And thank you very much for this opportunity to speak here.
Amandla. Amandla. Thank you very much, Comrade Pravin Gordon. Now, without any waste of time, so we've come to the end of our program. Amandla. So this is the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Comrade Shan Bolton, who is going to do a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to do a vote of thanks, but in the tradition that I did it a few days ago. Firstly, today we owe a special debt of gratitude to the Black Sash. Had it not been for the actions of the Black Sash, today would have been a disaster of immense magnitude for millions and millions of people who depend on state grants. I must apologize also that you had to gather here today. We tried to find a better venue in Saxon world, but we couldn't. I want to thank, first and foremost, Ahmed Kathrada. Even in death, Uncle Kathy has done something not seen since the 1980s. You have never had this kind of gathering since the 1980s. And in this hall. In August 1989, we celebrated his 60th birthday in the hall upstairs. The keynote speaker was Helen Joseph. A few years before that, upstairs as well, the call was made for the formation of the United Democratic Front. So the symbolism of that is what I will come to conclude on. But I want you to look at Uncle Kathy there. That look, as he stands like this, he's saying, don't you have anything better to do with your lives than come to a meeting on the 1st of April here? But that look is also saying, thank you very much. Thank you very much for not making my letter of appeal be a forgotten one. But I also have to say that Uncle Kathy got me to do something which I didn't want to do. As he was getting ill, I had to start doing a number of interviews. And after the first set of TV interviews, I was scolded by two people. My mother phoned me and said, hey, that beard of yours makes you look older than Kathrada. Isu Chiba and his wife said the same thing to me. I've shaved Isu, but I can't guarantee that it won't grow back. Barbara, the Kathrada family, 4 Saturdays ago, we had to make the most difficult of decisions. Exactly 4 Saturdays ago, we had to make a decision about whether Ahmed Kathrada was going to undergo this operation. But even as Uncle Kathy lay in hospital, he said, this is not a decision that I can make on my own. And he wanted to consult a wide range of people. Jokingly, I said to him, do you want me to convene a meeting at FNB so that you can consult the whole country? Not knowing that what the outcome was going to be a few weeks later. But that hallmark of consultation around key decisions is clearly what was lacking in the most momentous of decisions taken very recently. We owe a special debt of gratitude as the two foundations to the South African Communist Party. When the party heard that the memorial service had been cancelled indefinitely or postponed indefinitely and then postponed to a later date, they called us to say, look, we have booked the City Hall and we are going ahead with the memorial. Now at the funeral, inadvertently, we might have caused the demotion of Derek and Praveen. Derek was the chair, so obviously he was in the spotlight. I made the mistake of asking Praveen to stand, and I'm told that I wasn't too respectful. I called you PG and I called you Praveen. But fortunately, I don't have to say minister now. But Derek, you were fired because you grew the tourism numbers. Not for anything else. Pravin, you stopped us from getting into junk status. You did your job. Contrast that to those who would have brought about a crisis in social development. They have not been touched. I also want to thank Zapiro for making available this cartoon today. I don't know if you can see it, but he agreed that this could be used wherever and whenever, and he thought it was an honor. So thanks to Zapiro, I think you've captured the essence of Uncle Kathy. Donald Gordon, the hospital was amazing. On the 21st of March, they had to deal with something which they had never dealt with before. They were trying to insert the needles into Uncle Kathy to get a tube through, and he fought them off. And his last words to them, "I know my human rights, stop it." And they said, in respect for human rights there and in respect for him, they didn't do what they had planned to do. To the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Communist Party, our co-hosts, and the supporting organizations, the ANC Gauteng, and many others who are here today, across the political and ideological spectrum, I think you've indicated the kind of unity needed to deal with the problem at hand. All the various initiatives, our appeal as the two foundations, find ways of overcoming these differences. A small march here, a small march there, a small picket, a small demo is useful, but is of limited impact. If only all the different institutions can find a way of coming together in the next 48 hours and plan one mass-based campaign that allows all of us to participate. I think we have a better chance of success. So all the small initiatives must perhaps take place, but find ways, whether it's COSATU, the new federation, whether it's the party, whether it's the EFF, whether it's the DA, find ways of coming together to take us out of this mess. Lastly, it's just an apology to Ndleka Mandela. I know you were supposed to deliver a message here. I must apologize. I missed that text from Cello. But let me assure you that your words we will ensure is heard and seen by the many millions who might not have heard it yet today. The voice of Madiba would have been very important here today, and that's an omission from my side. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, comrades, on behalf of the foundations, a sincere thank you for making this a much better memorial than we would have had. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can people leave from those at the back? Can they start moving so that we get things okay? Thank you very much.